Welcome back, everyone. We have one of my favorite vocalists in the thrash world. We got John Kevill from Wabringer. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm out here in Florida in the middle of my forest, just doing press for Wrath and Ruin and gearing up for the release of this thing.
Nice. That's pretty cool. Well, let's get into this. You're about to release your seventh studio record. With this being the seventh, how has the writing and recording process changed since your guys' first record?
Oh, a lot. Well, first record, some of the first songs we ever wrote are on that record,
Mm.
and so we were messing around in a garage and kind of whatever came out happened. We're a lot more like focused, I would say, and we write. Kind of more like planned out and less sort of just like hashed out randomly. There's ups and downs to that, I think, but one of the real ups is we can take a song idea, like a lot of these songs that you hear now, say Sword in the Cross or Better World, both the singles so far, existed as like, here's the title, here's what it's going to be about, here's how we want it to feel, and then it was written with all that in mind, and we can actually like bring it together on that way. So it's we've been working that way, and what really allows for that is the fact that Carlos Cruz knows how to do studio engineering and pre-production really well, and
Right.
so it was me coming up with a concept for a song or something, getting that across to him. I'd have actually the end verse of Sword in the Cross, that whole section where the Lord goes on a rant about how he'll own you forever. That was the
Yeah.
first thing that was written for the whole record. And so the whole rest of the song was written to try to get to that. So stuff like that. But Carlos arranged most of the music on here. So it was mostly me on the lyrics and concepts and him on the musical arrangements.
That's
And that's pretty
crazy.
much how it was done.
That's pretty crazy. And I was gonna ask, since you've been in Warbringer since day one, how has your writing and recording, well, writing at least, changed since then?
Well, my writing, when I think if you look at I think I developed sort of my own style in writing and
Oh
in
yeah.
thrash lyrics and whatever. It's something I've had to write a whole lot of, and in my mind, if I don't try to progress in some way there, then I don't deserve to make a record for you. If I'm not trying, like get me out of there. So,
Right.
early first record, as I said, it's literally our first song. So there's more like, I don't know, I'd call it like night fight type of rhymes. Like this rhymes and fits. So that's where my writing is trying to just get it to do that in the first place. I'm a lot more comfortable with that kind of stuff now
Yeah.
and just have been doing it for longer. So I think I'm able to write more to a certain idea. And I don't know, I got better doing words in music, I suppose, after 7 records, and I can express more like targeted things that I want to, that I think fit with a certain song, and kind of get my own ideas to come to life more with words. That's kind of what I think changed. Basically, is my ability as a lyricist and vocalist to sort of enact what I have in my head.
Right. And how personal do you get with your lyrics?
I try to be entirely just straightforward and honest with whatever comes to mind. So some of the sentiments on like Better World or Cage of Air or something, yeah, entirely personal. Absolutely, that's how I felt.
Right.
So I'm just trying
And
to bottle something I feel. I'm not going to try to bottle someone else's feeling in there. I guess the exception being we did a song Through a Glass Darkly that's based on a poem by General Patton from World War II about reincarnation of all things. It was
right.
pretty interesting. So in that case, I guess I'm trying to bottle someone else's feeling, but that's because I read it and felt it myself that I
Right.
even wanted to do that. So yeah.
And with you talking about that, did it take like a second in the like when you're recording it to get into that mindset for those?
No, I mean, you just kind of come in with it that way. Like, by the time I'm in the studio and we're actually recording the thing,
Mhm.
I've thought it out and I've been doing my mental preparation. And just by writing the lyric, you kind of get in whatever headspace you're supposed to be to. And then once I start doing like any song, it's kind of really autopilot at this point because you can't really think too much about it as you're actually executing it. It just has to kind of come out of you. And at this point, like it's sort of like riding a bike, I suppose, because I haven't played with the band now since Latin America tour, which was a
Yeah.
few months ago.
Yeah.
We went there with Venom at the end of the year, and before that, it had been a few months since we played, and I'm going, okay, how am I going to be self? Am I going to give the performance I want to give? And it's like, nope. As soon as the 4 count starts, like it just happens. I almost don't have to think about it, and it's kind of funny, like, to be honest. I'm like, geez, how did because I used to, when we started the band, I used to really struggle to like get through a song or whatever,
Yeah.
and now it's almost like a reflex and stuff that, like, I won't remember if you ask me necessarily every word in the song, but if the song's playing, I will.
Mhm.
Like, and it's because I have to, because I'm there and I have to be on the beat and whatever. So it's funny how that works, and quite frankly, it's a little interesting to myself mentally how that even works out, because I'm normally not that way about stuff. Normally, I have to think about every single damn thing I'm doing, you know?
That's crazy. And do you have any favorite lyrics on this record?
Oh, sure. I think generally this one came out pretty strong. It's a very like bleak and dystopian thing. I really like the aforementioned monologue at the end of Sword in the Cross, where he's like, "Once I brought the sword, and still I am thy lord. My fathers brought the sword, yet I remain thy lord." And that whole like refrain thing going there, I think that part's really cool. It felt really evil when I wrote it and sang it, like that kind of energy. I think "Through a Glass Darkly" is a really cool lyric. I really like the lines for "Better World" and "Cage of Air," which kind of get at some, what I might call the modern spiritual malaise, you know. We have all this technology and things are more advanced than they've ever been, but there's a kind of like hopelessness that pervades a lot of people's view, I think for very good and legitimate reasons too. But I was really trying to stab at some of that, the idea that there's not sort of like an environmental future for the planet at large or an economic future for most people in it.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's crazy.
that kind of stuff, like the song "A Better World," I think with the title sounding kind of the opposite of the vibe, which is the point, you know, is trying to hit at that. And it's because as I said before, I felt it, you know, we were getting like extorted by our fucking landlord during COVID and stuff, as we're already paying like way more than we should be in the first place. And relative to what I make in an hour of work, it's ludicrous. And I'm like, you know, the hamster on a wheel trying to hand the produce up the chain, up the pyramid to someone who's higher positioned in society than me and owns stuff, basically. And just feeling bitter and pissed about that. But I think that's where most people on the planet are right now. Hell, we're in one of the rich countries.
Right. That's crazy.
You know, so just dealing with that and the kind of disillusionment of where society's going and what it is versus what I wanted to believe it was when I was a kid or whatever. You know, it's very nice to think that we have a free country, isn't it? It's a very comforting thought.
It is very nice, but crazy.
Yeah, it's very nice. If only it were true, you know. That's kind of the vibe I'm trying to get at here. And try to hit those things, which, so I think there's a lot of cool lyrics on there, on both "Better World" and "Cage of Air" that I really like. One bit, kind of a cool thing we did with the lyrical musical synergy bit, is there's a bit in the song "Cage of Air." I'm not sure if you've heard the record or whatever, because that's not one of the singles. But where it gets like all soft and like acoustics come in and stuff, and the speaker, which is me, I guess, but you know, the speaker of that song, I can imagine the speaker of each song is like a different person, even though it's all me. It's different me's, I guess. So the speaker in that song is going like, "Oh, you know, I found an escape from this metaphorical cage of socioeconomic factors that make my behavior predictable and make me question my own free will." That's kind of the vibe of the song, which I think is a real thing. You know, today, if you bought something, was it because you wanted it, or was it because of the most sophisticated propaganda network in the history of mankind is in your pocket voluntarily? You know, and how do you tell, right? And by you, I mean me, because I do it too. I'm not trying to be preachy. Like, I am affected by this, and that's why I'm talking about it. I'm addicted to technology. I'm not saying you are. You probably are too, but I'm writing about it because I am, you know? Yeah, so just to be clear, there's a part in that song where the speaker kind of is like, "I'm in the forest and nature now, and I'm free from the invisible chains that bind my life choices, but oh no, not really. That was an illusion too. Ah! You know, there's that, and that kind of happens in lyrics and music. And the way that came about was pretty cool. There's a scene from Blade Runner 2049, which I think is pretty great if you haven't seen it. Not an uplifting movie, but a really good one. Where there's like a forest and it's lush and it's a contrast to all the hellish like cyberpunk settings of the rest of the movie. And there's this beautiful forest and stuff, and it disappears because it's only a hologram, and it's revealed that we're actually standing in a sterile gray room. And that's like kind of a horrifying. My wife saw that and she was like, "That's like my nightmare right there." And I showed that to Carlos, who then arranged that whole segment I was talking about to that. And so we tried to hit that feeling of the forest and the beauty was an illusion, and that you're actually in like this colorless void kind of vibe. So we tried to put that in the song Cage of Air, and I think it came out feeling basically like that. And I thought that was really cool. I love when we can get an idea across in music in that way. And I don't think I have to explain all that to you for you to get that vibe when you hear it, you know?
Agreed, man. Man, the record's phenomenal. And I have to ask, with this record, are any of them archive songs from other records that you guys put out, or are these all brand new songs?
Never. Not once have we used archive songs from other records on a record. I think the only one is there's a bonus track for Waking into Nightmares, the second record, The Road Warrior, that was like on the demo EP preceding the first record that we redid. But that was a bonus track, not an album track. So we have actually never, that I'm aware of, written a full song that didn't make the record that we then kept floating around. There's like half a song's worth of riffs or two of those that are around that we recognize. Oh, I remember that one. We never figured out what to do with those or whatever. I can hear one in my head right now, but but we've never written a full song that we didn't like actually complete and put on the record. Which is crazy because we're known as a band. One of the things people know us for is consistency, and we're not like picking and choosing from our own ideas. Like every idea we have that we've actually worked on is on a record.
Okay, that's pretty fucking cool though. That's something that you don't hear often. Most people archive all their stuff that they don't use.
I know. I think it's just we're really picky and kind of winnow down our own ideas a lot, and for me, for instance. Okay, so if I have a lyric idea, I have this little thing I do where I don't write it down for like a week. And the theory is, if I don't remember, because you're like, what if you forget it? And it's like, exactly. If I forget it, it wasn't good to begin with.
Damn,
it has to pass the and I'm like a stoner and stuff, so my short-term memory is a little Swiss cheesy. But basically it needs to pass that filter. If it actually sticks around in my head for like a week or two, then I know I'm on to something. And then I won't archive that song. I'm going to finish that song and put it on a record because it's stuck in my head, so it might stick in yours.
Right. And there's another thing I got to ask. So you guys have 8 songs for this record. Were any of them named something different before they landed to this final cut with names?
Not one.
Dang, okay.
Every single one was written, the title was first on 7 of them, with the exception being the jackhammer, which was called that because I heard the riffs. I was like, that sounds like a freaking jackhammer. I was like, I don't have a title for this. But that's a word I've never used. And so that's kind of like the dumb song on the record. It's almost like just brutal violence. It kind of ended up using a lot of imagery from the area around downtown LA where our studio is, all the like trash and urban decay and barbed wire and concrete and all that shit. That's sort of where the imagery in that song came from, is actually right where we were writing it. And the title was just literally like the sound of the riff. Everything else was way more thought out. I'm usually like planned out to a fault. There's some musicians who can just like freestyle and go with it. I'm not those. I think through everything meticulously and plan it all out. And then I execute it like that. So I don't know how people work the other way, but some people might not know how I work the way I do, I suppose. But yeah, everything on this record was all like, we're going to write this song called this, about this, sounding like this. And we did. That's pretty much how we did it. Yeah.
And does that how with the track order, is that the same way? Did you guys kind of already know it? Did you guys go through a few track orders to make it the ending one?
We kind of talked it through and imagined it mostly. We put one down because we didn't record them. We had sort of a planned track order, and it was this. We did end up using our first plan for the track order, but we talked about it. We talked it through. We kind of theory crafted the decision, if you will. We started with Sword in the Cross because that was the first thing we wrote for the record. So that was our own starting point for it. So we're like, therefore, it's a logical opener, and also it has like a build up at the beginning and gets the record's main theme across, and all these reasons. But yeah, we really kind of planned it out to be the track order it was, and we didn't like see the whole picture beforehand. But it was, we're not that good or whatever. I don't have a crystal ball on our own records, but we listened to it when it was done because it wasn't set in stone. And we're like, do we like this track order? And the answer was basically, yes, we do. Other times we've wanted to like change stuff around, but generally we have an inkling what the track order is going to be before we get into before we're out of the studio and everything.
Right. And I've seen you guys a bunch of times. You guys try to make your guys' set list pretty well rounded. With you guys having this many records and adding this one to it, how are you guys going to go about making the set list for this tour? And how often do you plan to change it?
So right now the approach, because that's a question I don't actually know an answer to for myself, really, because it's
Right.
already a challenge. We got 7 records. We want to represent at least something from all of them, because I think we've put out a really consistent career and a really strong discography. We're recognized for that, and we want to show that in our set. But at the same time, it's like it becomes really hard to fit everything. And then you have to like kind of pick different archetypes of songs within a set, because we have mostly burners, and the set's going to be mostly burners, but it's mostly about we need to fill the spots of not burner to get the contrast apart. There's basically 2 flavors of that we have. We have the mid-paced bangers, like You're Living in the World, A Whirlwind, You Remain Violent, songs like that, Black Hand, songs like that. And then we have the epics, like the more epic or like mystical vibe ones, which we have Through a Glass Darkly on here, Defiance of Fate Before, those kind of songs. So we'll usually have like a mix of those as the basic recipe, but then we try to make it interesting within that and change it up. This tour, we don't actually have a concrete set list written, which is starting in like a week, by the way. And the reason that that's going to work and be fine and not be a problem is because we're going to rehearse all these different songs and kind of play with it. We haven't played any of the Wrath and Ruin material yet. And so we don't know how it's going to fit in the set, how it'll feel live, where it will go well or less well, whether we should open with it or bring it in the early middle of the set, or those kind of questions that I have. So we're going to, usually what we'll do is say if we're playing a 12-song set, we'll have the band know 15 or 16, and we'll kind of shuffle them, and we'll play with a few. And usually by the middle end of the tour, but usually by the middle of the tour, that's going to be like 90% figured out. And usually we have like 1 or 2 rotating slots of like, okay, about 3/4 through the set, songs 7 and 8, tonight will be these 2, but tomorrow night it'll be those 2 or something. Or someone said he wanted to hear that tonight, let's drop it in the rotating spot. So we always also too, I've seen it where bands like play the exact same set verbatim night after night. And to me, that's just not very rock and roll. Like, you know what I mean? Like you should have some spontaneity. There's a line, because you want to be rehearsed and professional, and like, and if you're doing a similar set with same song transitions, you get like even in stage banter or change, or when the band tunes, you can get used to that stuff and make it smooth and streamlined. Right. But it's also like, a lot of time we're playing like clubs or even bars or whatever, and even at bigger shows, it's cool to just be able, someone said this 1, 2, 3, 4, let's go. We're throwing it in. We can add this, we can subtract that, we can roll with it. Whatever happens on stage, we're going to play a killer song, a killer set, no matter what songs we play. And the band is good and knows our own material, and we can just bust it out whenever we want. I like that versatility and options. I remember there was a show we were playing with some more like veteran, like strong legacy bands, and they were, and one of them played the same set exactly twice. We played a totally different set both nights, and I'm not trying to claim superior, but it felt cool that we were able to do that. I was like, that's neat that we did that, because the fans that came, it was 2 nights in the same city. the fans that came saw two different sets from us, and
Yeah.
that's cool to offer to them, I think.
I feel like a lot of bands don't offer that. You see that with like bands like you guys or like newer bands, but you don't see that with, like you said, the legacy bands. They focus on that because they have like a specific way they have to do things, you know? And it kind of
Yeah,
blows.
and some of that's production.
Yeah.
Basically, the less production you have, the more free you are to just do whatever and play whatever. Someone shouts out Total War, and we have Combat Shock, because usually Total War and Combat Shock are like competing for their spot in the set. Because a lot of time we're only doing like one from the first record, because we'll have like
Right.
14 songs, 12 to 14 songs total in the set. And now there's 7 records. So sometimes it's either or on those two, and we can flip it anytime we want, and just like, yeah, it's fun to just have some of that in there. Usually stuff like the opening 3 or whatever ends up pretty locked in though. So we're not totally freeform,
Right.
but we want to have like an outline of the set,
Yeah.
and we don't. I'm not like locking it in before this tour. We're gonna go rehearse and kind of figure out an outline among ourselves as we're doing that, and how we're feeling, seeing how the new material feels when we actually jam it, and kind of decide based on that. And we'll probably adjust, because there'll probably be some stuff we do that we like and some that we don't like. And by a week or something into the tour, we'll have the skeleton of a set pretty well figured out.
Right. And then I gotta ask, with you guys having these new songs, is there any that you feel are gonna translate really well live?
Well, I think generally most of them will. I think perhaps something like Cage of Air would be tougher to pull off in a live setting. I think something like, I don't know, Jackhammer would be an obvious and easy sell live.
Yeah.
But I think really most of them could work quite well in a live setting. I think some of the more direct bangers like Jackhammer, Strike from the Sky, those might rule live, because generally they have great mosh riffs and stuff, and that always works. But I think something like, I wonder how something like Through a Glass Darkly would go over live as well, because it's kind of got this anthemic quality to the riffs and stuff. So I wonder, but the truth is I don't really know yet, and it's kind of an exciting and interesting thing to, when you have the songs on record, the songs, you know what they are, but playing them live is a different thing, and how it translates that environment, you really don't know, and sometimes it surprises you what people do and don't react to.
And then I got to bring up, you're gonna go on tour with you're gonna headline on one tour, and I know you're gonna like support on another. With touring with bands like that, what do you take from them and apply to Warbringer or yourself?
Oh, well, I think the wise person, anything you can. You see something that they're doing well or smart, like whether it's with their gear setup, the way they do their set, the singer says this or that, or like how any aspect of the show or music or whatever. I think anything you see, you should always be like mentally taking notes on and trying to learn from.
Right.
Um, and I think just like, because all these people, all these different performers and players have all these different talents and aptitudes, and they'll come up with stuff for their show that you haven't come up with for yours, and you should be open to like looking at it. And you don't want to like ape someone's way. You can kind of tell this is their thing. I wouldn't do it that way. I would do it in our context, in our way, this way. And I think that like every singer I've watched who I've thought, oh, that stage banter landed, or he came off cool this way. Or sometimes one of the things I've been gearing towards is I like it when we've been doing this. It's like we'll pull out like 3 songs in a row and then introduce the band, but 3 songs in a row, barely a break between them. Just open the set with like punch, 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 and
Right.
like try to keep the talk minimal and stuff. That's been something we've been doing in our show, because it gives it a vibe of like that the band is just laying down the fury basically, and is really hard at work, which it is. And that's different from if you have longer pauses, or if you're like telling jokes or whatever. So my stage persona has altered over time, over like my own seeing a bunch of shows and what I thought was cool. So yeah, I think everything that you see should be at least looking and seeing what works and what doesn't with crowds, and trying to learn from every performer that you can.
And I gotta bring up, your voices still sound so amazing after like what? You guys been together for 20 years now. How do you? It's crazy to think that for you guys, like for you, Do you do any exercises or anything you're doing that keeps it that nice and sounding that great?
I would say that I probably have like medium to semi-poor vocal technique in terms of some of the right, like all that throat
Surprising.
shredding sound is that it's like there's a lot. So it's mostly general physical health,
Right.
drinking way more water than you normally would. That's a big one. That's like the best thing you can do, really. Yes, I do warm ups, I do stretches and all that before a show. I try to, you can't, you can tune a guitar, change a string on a guitar,
Mm,
but your throat, you can't. So you just have to
right.
be in good condition as much as you can. Some days I'm more strained than others. It is not easy for me to get through a tour of ours. If I make it look easy, good job me. It's a lie. It's not, you know. So I think also too, my body's just adapted to having done it forever at this point. So what's funny is like if I'm off season, which I kind of am right now, it takes me a few minutes, like a day or two of trying to warm up before I can get the high shriek back to where it is. That's usually the toughest thing for me is getting that to be at that eagle
That's
that got
crazy.
lit on fire kind of pitch I'm going for.
Right.
Um, so yeah, but I think I've improved as a vocalist. I think it's
Mhm.
gotten more like natural and easy for me, not because I do any particular, like I remember I checked out some of that like Zenda screaming stuff, and I don't doubt that the method works or anything, but to me a lot of modern metal vocalists sound too much the same and don't have
Right.
enough of that like oddball persona that you get out of a lot of old vocalists who are technically like worse.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
like worse sometimes because it's got more character, you know.
Right.
So that's I'm just trying to like be my own character and play that, and
Right.
that's sort of the guiding star more than having like the most guttural low or the highest high or any superlative or anything. It's just trying to like do my voice and thing
Yeah.
as hammy and cool as I
Right.
can, basically.
Right. And this is where I start talking about some fun stuff. So you guys go on tour quite often. Is there any fun tour pranks you've endured or have done?
The best one we ever did was probably way long ago, but we toured with Nile, and they sometimes had a very like serious stage persona and stuff, you might say.
Right.
And they were playing Black Seeds of Vengeance, which has, if you know, it has this big like refrain at the end. It's pretty cool. And we were like kids too at this point. And we came out. It was like the last night, and they had been a little. Their tour manager and team had been kind of strict with us about like setting up in front of all the gear and just sort of like off the stage right now and that kind of stuff. And so I think we were ready to take the piss on him a bit. And we came out as toilet paper mummies and stage stove for that whole part. But we just came out, looking really, really stupid. And that was probably my favorite one we did. There's been some other ones. Arch Enemy pranked us once where they took the Warbringer banner and got a hold of it. They were like, "We'll put it up for you today." Their crew told us, and we're like, "Okay, fine." And they fold the thing so it says "Winger."
That's
So that was
awesome.
a pretty good one. I liked that one.
That's
Yeah,
a
there,
pretty
there
good
was
one.
some more, but and a lot of time it's like it's someone's birthday and people show up,
Right.
like spray confetti all over the drummer or something like that, and most everyone's fine with it. And one guy in the band who wasn't even the drummer is like pissed about it. Like there's all this
Right.
stuff with tour pranks. There's usually one guy who's pissed about it, and everyone else is like into the spirit, and the one guy's like, "It was a performance. What are you doing?" Yeah.
Right.
I usually am like, you gotta roll, you gotta laugh. It's the spontaneity and stuff is a
Right.
key element of a rock show that I wouldn't trade it for a little more professionalism and perfection.
Right. And with touring all the time, every band has their favorite place to go eat. What's your guys' favorite restaurant and what's your order?
I don't know if it's a restaurant per se, but I would say a West Coast or Southwestern burrito is
Okay.
my favorite food. It has to be. There is no other. There is none greater. And I'm not talking. Get your cheese and your sour cream and your lettuce out of here. Just we're talking like rice, beans, onions, cilantro. Usually pork for me, but man, they're all good. And salsa. and like that the burrito just and like big as hell, and by the time you're about three-quarters done eating it, you're like, I shouldn't finish this, it's too much food, and then you do. Like that's my go-to, and I live in Florida now, so the only real so like we haven't had a great like LA style burrito for a while.
Right.
Makes me very sad. We make them around here. We've learned to make really good beans and stuff, so we can do it well. But
Right.
yeah, that's the one. And in Europe, the go to, because you don't really have burrito. You can't,
Right.
if you find a burrito in Europe, I might caution you against eating it. Um, but you know, in theory, it's possible though that they're good ones. I just haven't seen it.
Right.
Um, but doner kebab, especially in like Germany and Belgium and that whole region of Europe, late night doner kebab really kicks ass and kind of fills the food niche of the humble burrito there. So those are probably my favorite foods. But honestly, I really enjoy pretty much every regional cuisine that I've come across, or at least something out of it.
Right.
Um, and that's so like finding, you know, internationally it's more
Yeah.
interesting quote, but you find all kinds of stuff. Oh, here's a really good this kind of food place. You know, there's
Right.
a great wing spot in our town. Fine, take me there. I'll go have some, you know, whatever it is.
Right.
I just enjoy that you can run into all these different places, and usually the context of being there as a band member instead of a tourist, there's somebody who like wants to show you what's cool about their town or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think just being open and not, you know, if I was like I want to go, if I really like Burger King or whatever, and I went there all the time, I would miss all this stuff. You know, not
Right.
that that's the greatest place, but you know what I mean.
Right. And for me being a vocalist and someone that tours quite often, what's something that someone would not expect from you outside of doing music?
Well, I don't know what people would or wouldn't expect, but I'll just talk about it. So I live in the middle of a forest. My wife and I have chickens here, and we're on a lake. We moved out of LA, and we wanted to
Yeah.
get the most like rural place we could. So we got this house that was abandoned for 13 years, which is how we were able to afford it because we sure couldn't have otherwise. Um, but we ended up in like this beautiful patch of the country in north central Florida on a lake, and there's like gators and armadillos and a wild
Oh,
bird
shit.
that befriended our chickens and all this. And so you can see me out there with like a camo swamp hat and like a rake or something a few times a week all the time. So that's something you might not expect from me. I was traditionally a city slicker too. I grew up in LA. Um, what else? I am really into like nerdy ass strategy games, and the big one the last few years has been tabletop Warhammer 40K. I'm a pretty darn good Space Marine player actually, and I have like a full army. I have one army, and I play like every other week. I'll go play a tournament, and I usually do pretty well. So that's one thing I do that's kind of like my at home hobby. Though I think if you know the band's work, it's probably not that surprising.
Yeah.
And then the other one is recently I've been like working as a tutor, and I've been teaching kids like
I
phonics
didn't
and
expect
math
that.
and stuff. So that's maybe not what you'd expect from me either, but that's one thing I've been doing.
That's crazy. I was not expecting the last one for sure. The other ones, maybe I could see you on like one of those, like what are they called? They're going to swamp and they have that big ass fan, and then they.
I've never been on one of
I
those.
could I
We
could
have a
see you
kayak.
having one of those.
We have a kayak though, and there are gators in our lake. We don't see them too often, but they're definitely there. My dad visited, and my wife caught a 4 pound bass in the lake, which
Wow.
is like to my dad who loves this shit. I never cared that much about fish. To my dad, it's like the greatest thing she could have possibly done in the history
Right.
of the universe. So, and we actually cooked and ate the sucker, and it was good. We fried that sucker up. It was
Dang.
rad. Um,
That's pretty
so
crazy.
yeah, that's and so basically I'm in this kind of like idyllic forest setting. It's like a swampy
Right.
jungle forest out here, and I really like that. I like being away from stuff. So a little stressed about going back to tour actually because of that, because it's just going to be
Yeah.
such a change of setting, and the tempo of everything will accelerate.
Right.
Yeah.
And what I have to bring up is you're part of for me because I'm in the modern thrash world, always been there. For me, you like one of those bands that kind of brought that to like the forefront. For you as a vocalist wise, what would your Mount Rushmore of modern thrash vocalists be?
Modern thrash vocalist. Well, that's interesting. I think you could say modern thrash bands, and they would be largely similar. But
Right.
let's see. I'd say that the bands that really stand out to me that stuck around in the modern thrash movement would have to be like aside from ourselves, I think Havoc must be on the list.
Oh
I think
yeah.
Municipal Waste was before us or Havoc or any of them by a bit. I think for like uniqueness and standing out sound wise, you'd have to say Vector, which is also a
Oh
really
yeah.
unique vocal style, the Space Eagle, you might call it.
Yeah.
And then for like a more recent entry that certainly made its mark on the scene, you'd have to say Power Trip.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. All the way.
certainly, which has a vocal style that I think has been copycatted a lot, and the fact that it has been shows you its impact.
Says a lot. Yeah, that your list
Yeah,
is amazing. I agree with all of them. And then what I have to bring up, so one of my last questions will be, what can we expect from Warbringer in 2025, 2026?
more freaking metal, of course. You know, we're gonna be out on tour, touring Wrath and Ruin, and we're gonna. If you see us on a stage, we'll kick your ass on that stage, no matter where on the planet it may be. Big or small or otherwise, we will headbang the entire freaking set and we'll play only ripping metal for you. That's what you can expect from us. And then sometime after that, we'll probably make another record. But if we're not there yet, we got to tour this one. And we're looking to be doing that probably well into 2026. I don't think I plan to do it like nonstop, but we're going to be looking for opportunities and taking them. And we've turned down several already. We could have been booked up the whole year. We're kind of waiting to see what the record does when it comes out and see what touring opportunities pop up as a result of this record landing on the public and everything.
Right. Perfect. And I'd like to thank you for taking the time to being on the show and everything. It was cool talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. I appreciate it. I feel I know I've seen you before as well. I recognize you. Recognize the name such. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So it's good to talk to you, and thanks for your support and having us on your site and everything.